Joseph Robert Getline Jr. was born in Derby. Most of my growing up was in Ansonia, except for 1 year in Oxford. My father decided we were going to be self-sufficient, so we had 9 acres with a hand-dug well and an outhouse down the path in the back. After a year, my mother said, "No way, I'm out of here." So we moved back to Ansonia. But graduated from Ansonia High School in '56. Went to Yukon at Waterbury branch. Then I had a little problem. I wasn't mature enough, so I ended up being suspended for 1 semester. When you're 18, you don't have a full-time job. There's one of the major things you can do is I do solemnly swear or affirm and sign up. So I joined the Navy.
Can you talk a little bit about your first assignment after basic training?
Well, in fact, a lot of places I've been no longer exist. Did basic training at Bainbridge, Maryland, which is long gone. Next stop was a school, basic electronics school at Treasure Island in the middle of San Francisco Bay. That was 6 months of schooling. Next stop, hopped on a plane, spent a week in transit up at Whidbey Island, where Officer and a Gentleman was filmed, and then on to the Aleutians for 1.5 years. Way out there.
Do you want to share any information about any specialized training that you received?
Well, that was 6 months of basic electronics training. When I left ADAC, flew to Oakland, came home for about a week's leave, and then took the train down to Norfolk for a crypto school for 8 weeks. And they threw a party, Christmas party, for all the military personnel in ships and staff on the shipyard. Surprise entertainer came out. Young, 20-year-old, slender, good-looking black girl, and she sang a song she had just released, I guess about 2 weeks before. Don't You Know? It was Della Reese. So it's kind of neat. And mid-December, got my first shellback certificate for crossing the equator. 6 degrees east when we crossed, on the way to Sierra Leone. We got to Freetown the week after the Queen had just formally opened their first independent parliament. And I spent 2 years on that ship. Got to see most of Africa, from Senegal on the west coast all the way around to Mombasa, Kenya on the east coast, including, broke my heart, 3 months in a shipyard in Cape Town, while the ship we had air conditioning installed. During that time, I can remember Christmas in '92 really stands out in my mind. I took 10 days leave and went camping with several South African friends that I had made. I was a member of a skin diving club in Cape Town for a couple of years. And we camped way down south at the tip of Africa. In fact, I have in my pocket, I brought my show and tell item. Christmas present I got from the South African friends. It's the Lord's Prayer in Afrikaans. Kind of neat. Fortunately, I can read it. I did pick up the language after 2 years down there, enough to get by.
I know that you shared that you were in the service for 24 years.
Yeah.
So, do you recall the day that service ended for you, and where did you go? Did you return home?
Well, when it ended, I had already spent about 8 months in Cyprus, which is kind of interesting. Managed to pick up a little bit of Greek. I left there. That was an adventure. I had to fly from Cyprus to Lebanon, stay overnight, and then fly up through Paris back to New York. On the flight from Cyprus to Lebanon, the guy in front of me had two goats, and the lady in the seat behind me, row behind me, had a crate of chickens. It was an experience. Oh, I went to D.C. That was in Washington. I try to forget Washington. I don't like it.
How would you say service impacted you?
Well, I got to see a lot of the world I wouldn't have otherwise seen. That's for darn sure. Something like 8 countries in Africa and several countries in Europe. Because even while I was in Naples, I made temporary trips, 2 to Greece, and several to Spain, plus a lot of travel within Italy itself. So got to do a lot of traveling on the government's dime. That's the way to do it. Somebody else's money. But I did learn a lot. Met a lot of people. I did find that most people in the world do have a sense of humor. I also found that when traveling, if you have a problem, the best thing you can do, especially dealing with cops of any stripe, is crack a joke at your own expense. Belligerency does not. I also found out it's pretty easy to get along with people. Be friendly, be open to their culture, and it's great. You can have a good time. Finally retired on 30th of May, 1980. Came right down here and bought a house in Stonington. An old one. It needed whole lots of TLC. But I was working as a systems engineer for analysis and technology in North Stonington.
Can you share what you wish more people knew about veterans?
We're real people. We've done a lot of things because of our experiences. I think we're a lot better off socially and educationally than people who stayed in one town and never went or experienced any other part of this country, let alone other countries. Because it is true. Travel is broadening, not just to your figure either. It broadens your mind.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
Well, if somebody is willing to work honestly, the military is a darn good place to go because you learn self-discipline. And a lot of people don't have that. That's why there's so many people, I think, up in arms and beating up on each other. They don't have the self-discipline. The military, it may sound like they drive it into you with a hammer, but you end up acquiring a lot of self-discipline. And that's necessary. It helps you go along to get along.
Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't covered? Do you want to share your story maybe about the Apollo?
Well, that was one of my highlights. Was just over 50 years ago. I was in Hawaii, and we were going to put a portable van with a ham radio station on the carrier that was the prime recovery ship. And the original plan was the networks were going to carry the launch of the rocket live and relay it to Hawaii, and then they would send it on to the ship. So the ship could get on, see the actual launch of the rocket they were going to recover. Well, that plan fell through. It didn't happen. But our little van of hams scooped the networks because a ham in Virginia Beach used amateur slow scan TV from the front page of Virginia Pilot of the launch and sent it to us on the ship. So we printed it out. We had it outside our van with a note to the networks. We could do it, but it was an experience to watch from the deck of the carrier, see that first little tiny parachute, and then the big ones opened, and then finally it splashed down, and we were so close that we had to, headed for the recovery site, we actually had to slow down a good deal because we were close to overrunning the recovery site. And as it was, the splashdown occurred, less than a mile away from the carrier. So we're right up in the front row seats.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, or you feel like we've kind of covered it?
Well, I actually have 3 shellback certificates. Got the first one in '61. The second one, I crossed the equator again in the Atlantic, only right on the prime meridian. Had zeros, all zeros for the latitude and longitude. And then going out for the Apollo 16 recovery, crossed it again at 180. So I got the first one and 2 other special ones, and a blue nose for being up above the Arctic Circle in the submarine force. So I did manage to qualify in submarines, and that was my goal from a long time ago. When I was in the 5th grade in Oxford, we took a field trip to New Haven. There was a destroyer and a submarine, especially since I had a second cousin who was a torpedoman in submarines during World War II. That's what I wanted to do. And I figured I wanted to make chief. Those were my goals. Well, I ended up making chief in '65. And then before I retired, while I was still in Naples, I ended up going to Master Chief. So my goals were met, the ones I started out thinking of in the 5th grade. And then I never left, in a sense, because I even spent 4 years as a field engineer at a mobile technical unit at the subbase. And then 2 more years as a contract engineer for the Naval Electronics Command up at the shipyard in Portsmouth, Maine. So in a way, I spent a good deal of time in the submarine force after I retired from active duty. Then contracts dried up a bit, so I got laid off from an A&T. So I went and spent 11 years teaching school at Grasso Tech, teaching electronics. Then I retired from there. In 2003, moved to North Carolina because I'd been told by a retirement advisor, hey, I see you've had some formal training, good deal of it with fiber optics. Well, go down to Hickory, North Carolina. Well, by the time I got down there in 2003, the bottom had pretty much dropped out of the area fiber market. So I decided I'll just really retire. Then I spent the next 12 years, a lot of it with working with the Red Cross. We had a program for homeless vets, a stand down. I was involved in that for the first 6 years of it. And I also spent 8 national disaster deployments with the Red Cross, including Connecticut, from the Connecticut River to Ninigret Park, Rhode Island, following Sandy. I was up here for, I think, 10 days, and then another week on Long Island. Then I decided, well, I really need to come back up here, so I come up here and bought another house in Stonington. And now I don't do anything except what I want to do.